Welcome to the Overflow Worship Podcast, where we serve and support leaders so you can serve and support your local church.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Overflow Worship Podcast. I'm your host, Andrea Olson. Thanks for joining me again this week. I have something so exciting in store for you. A few weeks ago, I did a fun webinar. It's called 5 Ministry Must-Haves, and I actually did it for an exclusive group of people, only for people who signed up and got like the special super secret link and everything. But because you are my faithful podcast listeners and I love you guys, I'm going to share it with you. So, without any further delay, here is the 5 Ministry Must-Haves webinar, talking all about how to grow and manage your worship team of volunteers. So if you're curious, like, how do I get more volunteers? How do I manage this team? Maybe you're a new worship leader. This is for you. And within the webinar, I shared the most exciting news of the year, I think, that we have launched a course, an online self-paced video course for new worship leaders. You're going to hear all about it in this webinar. So stay tuned. Here we go. 5 ministry must-haves. Welcome to the 5 ministry must-haves training. I'm so glad that you took the time to be here today. Welcome. My name is Andrea Olson, and I'm the founder of Overflow Worship, and I just want to tell you a little bit about myself before we dive into the content for today. So my husband's name is Gabe. We have 3 sweet girls. We're a homeschool family, and we live in Minnesota. I am also a worship leader and a songwriter, and I've been coaching and training worship leaders for nearly 20 years. Now, for the last decade, I have coached hundreds of worship leaders just like you through a ministry that I started in 2014, which I just mentioned. It's called Overflow Worship, and it serves and supports worship leaders in volunteer-supported ministries. Now, we all have a beginning, right? We all have an origin story, and if you're here, you might be at the very beginning of your story. You may be a brand new or newly positioned worship leader. And I'm so glad that you're here because I'm going to pack this training just full of everything that I possibly can for you because I want to see you thrive. And not just on day one, not just tomorrow, but really for the long haul in ministry and on your ministry journey. So when I started as a worship leader, I was 20 years old, I was newly married, and I was basically handed the keys to the worship ministry at our church without any sort of instruction manual. They assumed, like, she loves worship and she has musical talent. She has everything we need. But I honestly was so overwhelmed. Of course, it was fun. Like, if you're here, you probably like music a lot, and it's probably a big part of your heart. But I did not have the training, tools, or the resources to be an effective leader of a worship ministry. I was stressed and worried a lot about letting the team down, letting the leaders and the church down. And it wasn't that anybody intended that for me. It was really self-inflicted. But nobody in our growing church of 100 people understood exactly what those demands were either. And so we just thought, well, let's give it a shot. And I thought, how hard could it be? I went to school for music, right? Well, that's kind of funny because maybe you're sitting here today and you're like, yeah, I did too. I just graduated with a degree in worship ministry or pastoral studies with an emphasis in music. And I had an education too, but not a church ministry education. I realized that most of my musical training was not practical ministry training. I really needed step-by-step processes for things like scheduling my team, running a rehearsal, building set lists in collaboration with my pastor, and that's literally just the tip of the iceberg. And the church where I was at had no systems in place for me. I was their first staff worship leader who wasn't also the pastor and Sunday school teacher and the drummer. And actually, I'm not kidding. The pastor was the worship leader from the drums. And so at that point, we were just making it work with whatever we had. And there weren't resources out there at that point relevant to the regular local church, working with all volunteers, working with limited resources. So can any of you relate to that? Let me know in the chat. I love to hear from you in the chat. So if you can relate, please let me know. Now, I have learned a ton since then. And I had to create everything that I was using from scratch for the average sized local church context because there just wasn't anything out there for it, like I said before. And so out of that, I implemented countless systems, and through nearly 2 decades of trial and error, these systems actually work. And the tools that I'm going to share with you today are proven by me and also through hundreds of worship leaders that I've coached throughout the years. And I cannot wait to give them to you right now because, like I said, I really truly want to see you thriving and loving what you get to do. There was so much that I wish I would have had when I started as a worship leader, but I didn't. And you don't know what you're missing until you need it, but I did have to learn some things the hard way. And so we're going for it today. You're going to want to stay till the very, very end because I've got some really big news for you and I cannot wait to share it with you. So, and I also have some free stuff for those who stay till the very end. So if you like free stuff, stick around and tell me that you like free stuff in the chat. So whether you're overwhelmed and need all the support in the world, or you're super excited and joy-filled in your role, but you're just ready to take the next step and grow, let's go. The 5 ministry must-haves to grow and manage your volunteer worship team. Number 1. The first is an honest current assessment. I have spent a lot of time in my life kind of ashamed of where I am, that the ministry I serve or the organization I'm building, you fill in the blank, should be bigger, better, different, growing, more fruitful. And isn't that the truth for us in church ministry? There are so many public ways to be reminded of what we are not. And social media does not help. It makes it really easy to see all the amazing things that other people are doing and compare ourselves to them. Our narratives become, well, since I'm not that, I must be failing. They are successful, we are not. How do we change to become like them? And honestly, that is not a helpful perspective. Before we can do anything, whether it's grow or change or achieve goals, we have to honestly assess where we are. So first of all, though, we have to start with the good. So step 1 of your honest current assessment, this is kind of a 3-step piece here, so you're getting bonuses in this first one. Step 1 of your honest current assessment is see the good. What's wonderful about where you're at? And you can look at this from a personal perspective, from a team perspective, the people, the talent, anything. Doesn't matter. What is good? What are 3 good things about the worship ministry that you serve? And it's important for you to celebrate where you are and where you've come from. So write those things down and really let them sink in because there's a lot that you have to celebrate. Now, if you're new to the church and you don't know what they have, well, find out so you can honor it. If you don't know what they've come through and the things that they have to celebrate, that's part of learning the culture, right? So you need to get in and learn that. All right, step 2 of your honest current assessment is acknowledge the value. Now, you are called to this community for a specific purpose. You're not supposed to be like everybody else. Small doesn't mean failure, and big doesn't mean void of problems. You have a unique calling and gifting for the ministry that God has called you to, but you need to see the value of where you are. So it's very similar to the first point, but I really want to hit this home that you need to make sure that you address the things that are so valuable about your current team, your current situation. All right? And just don't miss it because it impacts your ability to serve those around you and it impacts your ability to love where you're at. So, step 3 of your honest current assessment is then you need to live in reality. We can't get from where we want to be if we don't know where we're starting from, okay? So yes, we need to see the good. Yes, we need to have this perspective of the value that we have now, but then from that, you need to know, like, honestly, realistically, where are we at? So whether it's your spiritual assessment or your team's spiritual assessment to the current status of the administrative side of your job, volunteer availabilities, status of your future goals, whatever that may be, you cannot get to where you want to be if you don't honestly assess where you are. And honestly, sometimes it hurts a little bit, but we have to set goals based on our starting point, not where we wish our starting point was. Can I get an amen? Tell me in the chat. So if you want to grow a thriving worship team, you really have to do this background work. And you need to be completely bought into the ministry, seeing its good, seeing its value, and then honestly assessing where you're starting from. I have found that the best things in life take hard work. They don't come easy, but it's totally worth it. Now, I can't move on to the next must-have without addressing the importance of your own personal spiritual assessment here. So make sure you keep that as part of your honest, realistic assessment of where you are, because you cannot survive in worship ministry if you don't invest in yourself spiritually. If you're not daily refilling in the Lord's presence, if you're not spending that time with Him, I'm sad to say that you are going to be on the path to burnout in no time flat. So it's your responsibility, though. No one else can do that for you. No, you may have mentors in your life, which I highly recommend, but sometimes we can put on a really good face, especially in ministry, of all the things that, people are just assuming that we're doing because it's expected, or, it's just, like I said, assumed. But you need to do this work. You need to make sure that you are assessing where you're at spiritually and then addressing those things accordingly. Okay? So please, please, please promise me that you will not let your spiritual growth fall by the wayside. All right, number 2 must-have is humility and adaptability. And a side bonus is a mentor who does too. All right? So before we dive deeper into this, I just want to tell you a story. So when I started leading worship, like I said, I was 20 years old and newly married, and as the years went on, we were developing a good rhythm and some decent systems and a few more team members, and it was exciting. But there was something that was consistently happening where people were showing up late, or they were just, kind of taking their merry time to put their instruments on stage and get tuned and that kind of thing. And it was causing practice to start later. And at that point, I was in my mid-20s, and I am constantly on a learning journey. I never want to stop learning. But at that point, looking back, I know I had a lot of growing and a lot of maturing to do. And it honestly was just really bugging me. And there are things that we need to do to address people being late, disrespect of people's time. Like, that's a whole different conversation. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have that, but I am saying that I had a bad attitude about it, and I approached it from a poor perspective. So here's the thing. I kind of got a little bit irritated at rehearsal on Saturday because there's a bunch of people that were late and we were running behind and I was tired. And so I told everybody, all right, everyone, I really need you to be on time tomorrow morning. So we're starting at 8 a.m. I want everyone on stage ready to go at 8 a.m. So guess what happens? Well, I overslept. And what nobody else knew is at that point I was pregnant and very sick. And so I showed up late and I felt terrible and walked in, and there's everybody on the stage waiting for me like I asked them to be. But I had a bad attitude, and I look back on that and I realized that I had unrealistic expectations of my volunteers because I hadn't communicated that to them before. Once I did, they were like, oh, sorry, and they showed up on time. But I didn't communicate that to them. And I was not approaching it with humility. I was not coming at it from a place of, being adaptable to their busy schedules or anything like that. I just kind of had a sore attitude. And so I tell you that story. I'm sure that none of you are like that or have ever had any experiences like that. But I give you that illustration because God used that small little thing to remind me of some really important things. And I also took that opportunity, yes, to apologize to my team when we gathered for prayer before service, because I knew that I needed to show them that side of me. And so That's what brings me to humility and adaptability. So what's humility? It's a perspective that none of this is about us. It's not demanding or degrading to us. There's a difference between low self-esteem and humility. We aren't tearing ourselves down or belittling ourselves. We're just realizing that God could use whomever he wanted, and he's using me, and it's an honor. And so none of this is about me or my platform or talent or whether this is or isn't a stepping stone to my next thing. That is the last bit of what this is. This has zero to do with me and everything to do with what God wants to do through me and in me in the process. Humility is realizing that all of this is growing me for his greater purpose and not my agenda or even my personal goals. So then what's adaptability? Well, things change every week. We have to adapt. And like in my illustration, I should have been considering and adapting a little bit more to the fact that my team members had jobs and school, and I should have been communicating to them a little more clearly as well. But, we're in a constant pivot from sick volunteers to snowstorms to power outages. That has happened to me more than once during a side note, but to, things like everyone's on vacation and it's Labor Day weekend and it's just me and the trumpet player. And that's adaptability because it's never going to look perfect, but it will be beautiful. And when you're willing to adapt and pivot because you can't control everything, you won't be all torn up inside trying to force your team into something that wasn't made for them, into a mold that they just weren't made for. The beauty of it is that it's made up of all different people in all walks of life. Is it hard to be humble and adaptable? Well, yeah, it is, but it's worth it. And your team is what makes you unique and needed for your community. So when the sound man can't make it because his car broke down, we humbly adapt. When the pastor asks for a hymn that you've never heard or can barely sing, we humbly adapt. Now, there's a respect piece that I will talk about maybe another time between pastors and worship leaders, and there needs to be a mutual respect in that type of situation. But because it's not okay if people on your team or someone on your staff completely disregards your policies or, says like, hey, can you do this hymn? And you're like, I don't know that hymn. And they say, well, too bad, figure it out. Well, that's a whole nother conversation, right? I'm talking about internally, our humility and our adaptability. So here's something that I just want to throw your way. We're talking about the 5 ministry must-haves to grow and manage your worship team. Now notice so far we have not even touched any systems or any recruiting strategies. You can do that all day long, but if you do not have these other things in place internally in yourself and within your team, none of that's going to matter. This is kind of hard, all right? But brace yourself. No one is going to want to be a part of a team that doesn't know who they are, that honest assessment, and who doesn't conduct themselves in a way that's worth following. That's in humility and with adaptability. Now, both of those two qualities are those that you want to look for in a mentor as well. So there's your bonus on this one, okay? Do you need a mentor? Well, do you want longevity in ministry? If yes, then yeah, you do. You have to do life with people who are ahead of you. I've been recently reading a book by Clay Scroggins. It's called The Aspiring Leader's Guide to the Future. Has anybody read that book? Tell me in the chat. I'd love to know if there's some other Clay Scroggins fans out there. He's such a great author. I love the way he communicates. And he talks about this concept of, if you're rafting or canoeing, if we take that and compare it to our lives, if we have somebody behind us, we have somebody alongside of us, and somebody in front of us, it's really valuable because the person in front of us can help us know what's coming or give us wisdom or guidance on what might be ahead. The person alongside of us is somebody who we can do life with and we can go through things together. And the person behind us, well, that is our calling and our honor to be that person who is ahead for that person behind, raising up that next generation. Going it alone is dangerous because we don't have people to call us out or to be an outside perspective. So find someone, honestly, when you're looking for a mentor, find someone from outside the church. That's a really valuable perspective to have. Okay, next, number 3 must-have is the ability to delegate. Now, you might be clapping your hands and saying, oh, that's amazing, good, I want to pass off the things that I don't want to do. But here's the thing, we do have to have the willingness to do what's needed, and we talked about humility, right? Serving no matter the task, but we can't do it all. And we are expected to do it all in worship positions, but it's not humanly possible. And great leaders excel in their lane and raise up others to excel in theirs. A great leader recognizes when someone is more gifted in a certain area and is excited to train them up and delegate. It cultivates an atmosphere of empowerment and trust in your team that's really powerful. So I challenge you to be one who empowers others so well that people don't notice when you're not on the platform. So delegation, before you start asking people to just do stuff for you, first you need to recognize your team members as people, valuing the relationship before their gifting or before what they can do for you. And secondly, just keep in mind, empowering others to excel in their gifting is just not handing off the things that you don't want to do. But who would like that though? Tell me I'm not alone in the chat. Now, so this is raising people up. And guys, this is the long way. This is not the shortcut, okay? I'm just gonna be super honest. It's the longer, harder way. But every decision you make today has a cumulative impact on tomorrow. So if you start building into people today, down the road, you'll look back and realize you have an army of people who love serving with you. And it's all because you cared for them enough as people first to pour into them and then delegate through empowering them. Now, think about it. There's probably someone on your team that's better at a specific aspect of your job than you are. And let me just tell you, there's nothing wrong with that. Don't have to be ashamed of it. Embrace it. The best leaders know this and empower others to serve in their gifting. So a team grows and thrives because each member feels valued and needed, not only for their unique gifting, but for who they are as a person. Everyone really wants that sense of belonging. So before going on to the next must-have, I really have to hit home that this might look like, and probably will look like, raising up the next generation, and that does not feel helpful, right? It doesn't feel easy when we take the time with a young drummer who maybe just needs someone to invest in them, or a young singer who has the raw gifting but really just needs someone to come alongside of them and invest in them. And that does take time, but let me tell you, it's powerful and it is worth it. You never know whose life you're changing by taking the time to invest in someone. All right, you're doing amazing. Keep sticking with me because there's free stuff for those who stay till the end. All right, the number 4 must-have, clear communication. This one seems pretty easy, but like I gave in my illustration before, and I'm still learning in my adult life that it's not. I now, because I've learned, like I said before, I'm an over-communicator and a very detailed person by nature, which maybe is annoying to some people, but is anybody else with me? Detail lovers out there, let me know. Tell me in the chat. I want to know I'm not alone. But we can't just assume that people know what we're thinking. We have to clearly communicate everything. Lay out your expectations, especially in your position because you're working with volunteers and maybe a large group of volunteers. And so we cannot assume that everybody knows the system or the protocol or what's expected. So what does that look like? Every week, over-communicate what you need from your team, okay? Over-communicate set lists, details for rehearsal, and anything that would be helpful, okay? So over-communicate what you need from your team and then over-communicate what they need from you, right? So give them all the resources that they could possibly need so that they can come to rehearsal prepared. Okay, so then in rehearsal, you have to give a clearly communicated roadmap of what to expect. How long is rehearsal going to be? How much music? How much music do I need to prepare? What do I need to do to prepare? What's expected of them for rehearsal? So those are all of the things that you really need to keep in mind and tell them, because otherwise you're going to feel frustrated, and so are they, because you didn't communicate to them, but you have an idea in your head of what you want, but they didn't know that. And so we need to really give them all of the tools, all of the resources that we possibly can to help set them up for success. Your team should be given plenty of time to prepare too. So when I talk about giving out these resources, please do not give them the night before rehearsal, because remember, you are working with volunteers. And so you need to give them time. This isn't their job. This isn't their full-time job. So just remember, give them plenty of time, over-resource them, and over-communicate. All right. Stick with me. I know that maybe you're getting overwhelmed on information, but we're nearly wrapping up here, okay? Number 5 ministry must-have is a roadmap of the vision and your expectations. People don't really want to follow someone if there's no clear direction where they're going. You have to show them the target. You have to tell them how you're going to get there. Your team needs to know the mission, vision, and values of the church and the worship ministry. Point them at the target. Otherwise, they're shooting in the dark, and that's really difficult to be a part of. So I'm going to tell you about the mission, vision, and values of Overflow Worship, the ministry that I started that serves and supports worship leaders just like you in volunteer-supported ministries. So at Overflow Worship, the ministry that I started that serves worship leaders just like you in volunteer-supported ministries, we have a set of mission, vision, and values, and I want to share it with you, okay? So here are our values, and these serve as a filter for every decision that we make. So as you can see, our core values are relationship, we listen, we handcraft, and we value community. And so that really serves as a filter, like I said, for all the decisions that we make. And we're not going to get into the nuts and bolts of how to set these and the process of that today, but it's really important that you have core values for your worship team. And even more importantly than that, it's really important that you have the set mission and vision. So for Overflow Worship, you'll see our vision here to nurture and teach worship leaders in volunteer-supported ministries the spiritual, technical, and leadership skills necessary to cultivate a thriving worship team and lead from the overflow, not the overwhelm. And our mission is then specified. So that tells people how we're going to do it. And you can see that here on the screen. And so what I want you to see through this is that we have a very clear set out vision and mission for the organization, and we have a clear set of values. Now, if you don't know what those are for your church, I challenge you to go find out, because it is absolutely key for you to understand the mission, vision, and values of your church ministry. And then how does that apply to you in the worship ministry? Maybe there are some things you can do to further define and refine the church's mission, vision, and values to be specific to the worship team. Now, guys, these are all foundations. We cannot build a strong ministry on top of a weak foundation. If you don't have these things in place, it's going to be really difficult to thrive for the long haul. These 5 must-haves for a growing team may not be what you expected, but that's exactly why it works. We often look externally for problems as to why the team isn't growing. But it starts with what isn't seen. It starts with foundations. Then you have something solid in place on which you can build, which in turn makes it easier to manage because you have systems in place. You see how that works? Because at the end of the day, this is about longevity in ministry. Like I've said at the top and throughout, I want to see you live and lead with longevity. So I'm sharing all of this with you to help you on that journey. And here's the thing, this is really important. Longevity doesn't all of a sudden just happen one day. It's achieved through daily wise choices that accumulate to a positive impact on each day. And when you stack those up day after day after day, you're going to get to the end of your journey and realize that your choices led you through with longevity. It's not a destination, it's a journey. And you don't realize that you have longevity when you're in it. You get to the other side and realize that you either did it or you didn't. It's not a choice you make halfway through your ministry journey. It's a choice you make on day one. Longevity begins on day one. And these 5 ministry must-haves are daily choices that add up to just that. So I want to tell you a story of early on in my worship leading journey. I remember that I had been with my mom. We had lunch. I think we went to the grocery store, and I remember sitting in the car with her, and we were just having a deep, great conversation. And I remember telling her, Mom, I'm exhausted. I had been leading every single Sunday with no break at all for years. I was overwhelmed. I didn't have any help. I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have community. I was doing all the things that I'm telling you not to do. And that's why I'm telling you, because I learned the hard way. I was making all the systems that I needed by myself, and I was exhausted, honestly. I didn't have this foundation. But once I realized that and I started building my foundation and making that investment, I was assessing, adapting, investing and delegating, communicating, and vision casting. I saw a huge shift. So when my small but very sweet worship team struggled to learn a new syncopated rhythm for a syncopated song, or my volunteer sound tech, the only one, by the way, called in sick on Sunday morning, or when the Sunday team turned out to be 7 vocalists, 1 drummer, and a lyrics person, I could take it in stride because I had the foundations in place, and I wasn't leading from overwhelm anymore. I was leading from an overflow. Maybe you're here today and you're overwhelmed, but you need help to grow. Maybe you're here today and you're not overwhelmed, but you want to grow. Maybe you have amazing volunteers, but you just need those systems in place. No matter where you're at on your journey, these 5 must-haves are for you too, whether you're in the overflow or the overwhelm. They're foundational to any goal you may have in worship ministry. I cannot believe that my time is almost up. I have so much more that I would love to share with you. If you picture an iceberg, you know how they say everything is below the water? Well, what I shared with you is just the tip of the iceberg, and I would love the opportunity to share the rest of the things that I have learned through my nearly 2 decades of worship leadership, and over half of that spent training worship leaders just like you. And I don't want to hold anything back. So I have spent the last few years dreaming and the last 12 months building a brand new online self-paced video course designed specifically to help you lay the foundations to thrive in worship ministry for the long haul. This course was specifically designed for new or newly positioned worship leaders. And guess what? It's finally ready for you. It is available now. I don't want anybody else to have to learn this the hard way like I did, because I truly want to see you live your best life in ministry. And you know what? We have a generation coming up after us that needs us to share the roadmap. We can't just throw them the microphone anymore and say, good luck, because it's a huge job. So I'm so excited to tell you the Overflow Worship Leaders Startup Toolkit is available now. And honestly, there is nothing else out there like it. There are 6 modules, and each one takes you through 5 video lessons addressing the foundational practices that you must have in place, and the ones that I have been teaching and implementing for years in order to thrive for the long haul. I want you to live leading from the overflow, not the overwhelm. This course is handcrafted for the local church, volunteer-supported context. In addition to over 30 training videos, I've created a nearly 60-page course workbook with templates, the ones that I created on my journey and I've used for years in planning and for managing a team successfully. And these systems are designed to help you work smart, freeing you up, allowing you to devote time and attention to other areas of ministry, to raising other people up, and also to have healthy breaks when you need them because these systems will work for you. And the other thing that has me just so excited is that I'm not the only one teaching. So I'm really excited to share with you that Brian Tabor, the founder of the viral Instagram account Worship Leader Probs and the founder and host of the Worship Leader Probs podcast, who has over 30 years of worship leading experience, he has joined me in this course and teaches throughout all of the modules. It is jam-packed with everything we wish we would have had when we started, and we're handing all of these tools that we created off to you. So, if you're a brand new worship leader, no matter your age, this course is for you. If you're starting in a new church, this course is for you. And you know what? If you've been leading for a long time, you can benefit from these concepts and templates, and if nothing else, you can learn some tips to pass on to the generation that you are raising up. I know that if I were learning about this course, I would take it because I'm committed to being a lifelong learner, and I know that there's always room for me to grow. I actually personally have purchased 2 new courses for myself in the last month, and I'm really excited to dig into them. After taking this course, you will feel empowered to tackle the joys and challenges that you face in worship ministry. You'll be confident in your foundations and the systems that you have in place, not only for your role in this church, but for any future role that you hold. And guess what? You're going to lay the foundations for your current church to thrive even when you're on vacation or even after you're gone and called to another ministry or life calling. You might be thinking, you know what? I can probably figure this out on my own. But isn't that what maybe you're currently doing that isn't working? Maybe that's how you found yourself here, because you're looking for help and support. This course will help you to work smart, get the help you need, and it's just the gateway to a wonderful community in Overflow Worship that will provide just the support that you need. Now, you're probably wondering how much it costs and probably saying, well, my church isn't going to pay for this, so I'm out. Well, you could ask because they might surprise you, but your church doesn't need to pay for it. This is an investment in you, and I have made it affordable considering church salary or full-time volunteer status, which, side note, that was me. 15 years, all volunteer. So for you guys, your price is $149, which honestly is probably less than eating out and getting coffee over the course of a month with your family, right? So I really wanted to make this as affordable as possible for you, and I really think that this is a small sacrifice for a lifelong investment in the ministry that God has called you to. I'm confident that this is going to help you on your journey, but just in case it's not what you needed, we do have a money-back guarantee. If you dig into the modules and you find out it's not what you need, just let us know, and we will happily refund you. So here's what you need to do before I give you your free gift for sticking with me all the way to the end. All right? All you need to do is head to overflowworshipleaders.com/toolkit. And there you're going to be able to read everything you ever wanted to know about the course and grab it and purchase it and start it today. All right? That's all you need to do. It's easy. overflowworshipleaders.com/toolkit. All right, so since all of this is about longevity in ministry, and I talked about the importance of spiritual assessment and consistent spiritual investment, I'm going to share a devotional with you that I wrote. It's based around the song that I wrote called You Already Have. And so all you need to do is email us info@overflowworship.com and say, I want Andrea's devotional, and we will send it to you via email. I hope that this short devotional is an encouragement to you. You can print it out, you can use it in your devotional time in the weeks to come, and I just hope it's a blessing to you. Thank you so much for joining me today. I cannot wait to see you thrive in ministry. And as always, I'm here to help you. Reach out to me on socials at Worship Leaders Online or shoot us an email. Again, info@overflowworship.com. And I hope to see you inside the Overflow Worship Leaders Startup Toolkit. Thanks so much. Until then, be blessed. So if you take anything away from this podcast, it's this. If you are a worship leader, go to overflowworshipleaders.com/toolkit. Check out all of the things. And if you have any questions at all, let us know. We want to hear from you. We want to feel like you're making an informed decision. But guys, this course is so special. It's the first of its kind, and I hope that you will join us inside. And hey, if you're not a worship leader, if you're a pastor or just somebody who loves worship and you're along for the journey, I'm glad that you're here listening to this podcast. Maybe you know somebody who could benefit from that, and you could send them the link. All right, guys, I hope that you have a great rest of your week. And until next time, be blessed.
You've been listening to the Overflow Worship Podcast. If you enjoy our podcast, please take a moment and leave us a 5-star rating and a written review, which helps us reach more people. New episodes are released every other Monday. So until next time, thank you for listening.